Let's talk about Nagorno-Karabakh because people are talking about the risk of ethnic cleansing and even genocide. On July 10, Samantha Power, head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, called on Azerbaijan to ensure the right of the population forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh to return safely to their homes. During her visit to Armenia, Samantha Power also noted that the United States Department of State is assessing the legality of the actions taken by Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh in light of the documentation that was recently released. Meanwhile, in Washington, the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan started a fresh round of U.S.-mediated talks. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated that Armenia and Azerbaijan are on the brink of an agreement for a dignified peace. With their statements, Samantha Power and Antony Blinken touched upon three key issues that the international community is being called to address in the Caucasus: the right to return, accountability, and peace. Hi, I'm Greta Ramelli, legal officer at PILPG, and this video is part of PILPG's quick video guide series. This series is meant to help viewers digest complex global events through the perspectives of peace negotiations and international law. So let's take a step back. Internationally, Nagorno-Karabakh is recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but since it declared its independence in 1991, the territory has operated as a de facto state, despite multiple periods of violence and wars involving the self-declared Artsakh Republic or Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan views the Artsakh Republic or Nagorno-Karabakh as an illegal occupation of its territory, whereas Armenia and the Artsakh people view it as a materialization of the right to self-determination. For decades, representatives from the two sides held numerous inconclusive peace talks mediated by the OSCE Minsk Group. In 2022, Azerbaijan instituted a blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh by closing a humanitarian corridor that connects Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia and the region. On September 19, 2023, Azerbaijan launched a large-scale military offensive in Nagorno-Karabakh. In a 24-hour assault on the region, Azerbaijan successfully occupied nearly all the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. With the Nagorno-Karabakh surrender, Azerbaijan opened the corridor to Armenia, which prompted nearly all of the 120,000 Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh to flee to Armenia, fearing further violence and persecution. International law provides that the Artsakh people who have fled Nagorno-Karabakh have a right to return to their territory of origin. Additionally, Azerbaijan is obliged to identify the conditions that prevent their return and address them to facilitate such a process. International law provides that the Artsakh people who have fled Nagorno-Karabakh have a right to return to their territory of origin. Additionally, Azerbaijan is obliged to identify the conditions that prevent their return and address them to facilitate such a process. So what are Azerbaijan's international obligations under the right to return? Under modern applications of international law, voluntary return has two components. First, the displaced person has the choice of whether or not to return. And second, the conditions in the home state have to be safe enough to allow the return and resettlement. These applications would require a state to ensure safe conditions for the return of displaced persons and to allow the returnee to choose when and where to return and resettle. So when Samantha Power called on Azerbaijan to ensure the rights of the population forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh to return safely to their homes, What she meant is that Azerbaijan should comply with its international obligations and create the conditions for the return of displaced persons to their homes. Whenever a state uses armed force, two key legal questions arise. First, did the state violate any international laws by resorting to force? And second, did the state commit any violations of international law with its conduct during war? It is important to make this distinction because the answers to these questions can be found in two different branches of law: international law and international humanitarian law. The first question is a jus ad bellum question, and it relates to the reasons for going to war. The answer to this question can be found in international law. The second question is a jus in bello question. It regards the conduct during war and is regulated by international humanitarian law and other applicable laws, including human rights law. Under human rights law and humanitarian law, states have specific obligations. They should not only refrain from committing violations of humanitarian law and human rights law, but also prevent them. The second question is what Samantha Power was referring to when she said that the United States Department of State is assessing the legality of the actions taken by Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh. Following Azerbaijan's large-scale offensive, several human rights organizations and the government of Armenia accused Azerbaijan of committing ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh.
My name is Vartan Oskayan, and I'm making this statement, as you said, on behalf of Christian Solidarity International. I formerly served as Foreign Minister of Armenia, and currently I'm heading a committee established by the National Assembly of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic to raise and defend the right of return of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh to their homeland. Madam Chair, 9 months ago, Nagorno-Karabakh was indeed home to more than 120,000 indigenous ethnic Armenians. Today, virtually no Armenian lives in Nagorno-Karabakh. Last September, after laying siege for more than 9 months, Azerbaijani government attacked Nagorno-Karabakh and forced the entire population to flee. These actions were directed to Nagorno-Karabakh population on the basis of their ethnicity, and those actions achieved their result: ethnic cleansing.
The term ethnic cleansing has garnered different definitions over the years. The United Nations describes it as, quote, a purposeful policy designed by one ethnic or religious group to remove by violent and terror-inspiring means the civilian population of another ethnic or religious group from certain geographic areas. While ethnic cleansing is not defined as a matter of international criminal law, it's one of the underlying acts of the crime against humanity and genocide. Depending on their jurisdiction, it can be prosecuted before international criminal tribunals. Azerbaijan is also accused of committing other atrocities as part of its strategy, including arbitrary detention, torture, enforced disappearances, forced displacement, and extrajudicial killings. Human rights organizations and the government of Armenia are not the only ones who accused Azerbaijan of wiping out Armenians. In March 2022, the European Parliament passed a resolution acknowledging that Azerbaijan's actions do not only affect Armenian people, but also physical symbols of their existence as a culture and society. So when Samantha Power says that the Department of State is looking into the legality of actions taken by Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh, she is in fact referring to potential violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law. With the assistance of the international community, Armenia and Azerbaijan have tried multiple times to resolve their dispute. For decades, the negotiations between the two adversaries were conducted with mediators, varying combinations of Russia, the United States, and European powers. According to many, the influence of powerful global actors was necessary for the two sides to work through their mutual distrust. Blinken's recent statement suggests that the US is currently mediating peace talks between the two and that the two countries are close to reaching a historic agreement. While not much information is available on the content of this deal, it seems that it's centered on regional cooperation rather than territorial disputes. For this reason, Armenia may be asked to change the constitution as a precondition for signing the deal. The Armenian constitution still includes territorial claims, which, according to Azerbaijan, pose a threat to its sovereignty. In return, Azerbaijan emphasizes providing all kinds of support for the opening of the middle corridor. We really hope this quick video guide was helpful to better understand what is happening in Nagorno-Karabakh through the perspectives of international law and peace negotiations.